Mr. Marty? Y'all bring it up for Mr. Marty up here.
Man, I like this guy's passion. This is awesome. Man, what a way to start. Good morning, brothers. I've got just a few quick announcements. Do you want to leave? You might want to take it. I don't know if David's going to get wild and crazy up here, but I'd hate for him to kick it over. It's a nice guitar you got there. Oh, the snakes. All right. The snakes are coming, so beware. Brothers, welcome this morning. I got just a couple of quick announcements, and then I'm excited to bring David up. But I haven't done this in a while, but I want to make sure. I've seen some new faces the last several times. I want to make sure everybody knows what New Canaan Society is. We've only been here, the Middle Tennessee chapter, we've been here for, almost 9 months now. So we're kicking strong. I mean, this is fantastic that we're having a good group of guys show up every couple of weeks and want to engage with each other. If you're not familiar with New Canaan Society, just a real quick bit, it's almost 20 years old. There are now almost 50 chapters in the U.S. This is the first one in Tennessee. Wes Yoder, Larry Stone, and Andy Marshall and I felt a calling that God needed to bring one of these things to Tennessee, and obviously he's blessed it, and so we're grateful you guys are coming. But if you're not familiar with NCS, go to newcanansociety.org. You can learn more about the organization, but just real quick I want to share, I'm going to read this just so I don't botch it because I would. NCS is a network of men joined by a common desire for a deep and abiding friendship with Jesus and lasting and transparent friendships with each other. That's what really drew me to this. The mission and purpose of NCS is to connect men who seek and value such friendships, to work together in partnership, and to engage and equip each other to experience personal transformation in an environment of trust and acceptance. Through friendship, partnership, and transformation, we will have a positive and powerful impact on our families, our communities, and the marketplace and the world. I love that. I think that's really cool. That's what we're about. So glad you're here. A couple of quick announcements. If you would please not forget to leave a tip. These guys do a great job providing coffee for you guys. They do a really good job. So please don't forget to leave that when you leave. And then I'm trying to think, there was something else, and I'm probably – oh, I know. I just passed around an email list. If you're not on our email list, if you're not getting it, put your name on that. We'll make sure that you get on that list, okay? All right. David Hampton, come on up, brother. David is the – and I hope I don't mess this up, but you're the Director of Worship Arts. Did I do that right?
That's exactly it.
At Christ Community Church. 16 years you've been there, a member for 23, somewhere close to that. I've known David for many years as a amazing songwriter and musician in this town. So I'm excited to bring David up. And come on, David.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you all for having me here. It's a pleasure and a joy to get to share my story, or at least a little bit of it with you today. I see some familiar folks and faces and some of my church buddies, which, this will be like the cone of silence, so we don't take this out of here. But it really is a joy to get to stand here today for a number of reasons, and not the least of which is that God is indeed mighty to save, and I'm living proof of that. And my story is one that is a little unique, and then it's one that's not unique at all. And my hope in sharing things this morning, and when I go out and speak, is I have a little bit of a mission in the back of my head that I want the church to become something more like this. If the church can become something more like this, then maybe we can really do something. We need places where men can be authentic, where women can be authentic, and say what's really going on in our lives. And I'm not sure that the brochure that we have for what the church is right now offers that opportunity very much. And I'm not here to throw rocks at the church. I'm here to challenge us to take what we experience in groups like this and like Samson and like AA and SA and all these other groups that we go into that are sort of apart from church, and take that into the church and give people permission to tell their stories. Because I'm really not that unique. Over the last several years, I have learned a few things, and I have relearned a few things, and I have rethought a lot of things about my faith, about who I am, about why I do what I do, and about who God is, and what it means for the two to come together, the two of us to come together. I've begun to believe that growth is what happens when we learn to discern what we really believe from what we wish we believed. And that adversity doesn't change our circumstances and doesn't necessarily change our issues. It just turns the ones we already have up to 11. And I don't think that suffering necessarily changes my beliefs. I think it reveals them. And I've learned that surrender isn't about giving up. It's about letting what is real be real. When I was first married, and I say first married meaning that I got married 3 weeks from my 21st birthday, which I don't recommend, but I did. And 30 years later, it's a miracle that we're still speaking, actually. But I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. I was clueless about everything. I wanted, I knew I loved this woman, and I wanted to be with her the rest of my life, and I wanted to have sex before Jesus came back. And so, that was pretty much it. And my other goal was to get my driver's license before Jesus came back. But I did that. I lived to 16, so I got that. So then I wanted to have sex before Jesus came back. And so then I figured I'd better get married before it, Anyway, that's another thing. But we were in our little kitchen on Columbia Street in Evansville, Indiana, where we both grew up. And we had this little 2-room house, and I call it a kitchen because it had a sink. So it was technically a kitchen. And we were cleaning up dinner, and the phone rang one night, and it was one of these telemarketing guys, and he said, I answered the phone. He said, Mr. Hampton, I'm calling to tell you you've won 3 free ballroom dancing lessons. And I was like, wow, gee, yeah, thanks. And, and how much money do I get if I go? That's kind of what I'd like to know. And he said, we'd be happy to bring you and your wife in, and you can learn to dance and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it sounds really, as compelling as you make it sound. No, thank you. And I hung up the phone, and Tricia said, well, who was that? And I said, some guy with dance lessons, going to sell us ballroom dancing lessons. And she said, well, why'd you hang up on him? And I'm like, why wouldn't I hang up on him? And she said, I would love for us to dance together. We've been married, and we've never danced together, and we grew up in a very conservative fundamentalist type church, and so we never danced together. And I'm like, okay, 2 things. First of all, never put Tricia in charge of fun. And secondly, next time I'll ask. Always ask. Note to self. New groom, always ask. So someday we'll get around to it. She said, I'm not upset. I just want you to ask. Great. Next time I'll ask. When I was 13, my parents went to a Christmas party, and they left me home alone. It was Christmas time. Charlie Brown's on TV, and I am in the house by myself. My Christian family that I grew up in did not drink. And my mom had grown up in some real chaotic alcoholism, and she was not going to have that in her house and her family, and we did not drink. My dad, on the other hand, had a client who gave him a bottle of Kentucky bourbon in one of those foil boxes that people give you when the liquor store's trying to make a good impression. And I remember some discussion about it when it came into the house. And it was, what do we do with it? Do we give it to somebody? Do we just keep it? Do we stick it in the back of the closet? If we keep it, what's that say? And if we give it to somebody, is that perpetuating something that we don't believe in? What do we do? So they stuck it in the back of the pantry behind the baked goods, which is where I now know that Baptists keep their liquor. And so they stuck it back there, and we didn't talk about it. It was like having a body buried under the house. Everybody knew it was there, but we didn't talk about it. And my mom and dad go to this Christmas party, and I'm 13, and I decided that I'm going to pull out these little glass tumblers that we have that my mom used for orange juice, but they were really on the rocks glasses, and in the 70s they've got the mallard ducks, emblazoned on the side. And so I pulled down this glass, and I decided I'm going to mix a drink. I'm going to see what this is all about. And I put some ice in this glass, and I filled it about half full with bourbon, and the other half was Sprite, because I'd seen my aunt and uncle do that, because they, quote, socially drank. And so I went into the family room, Charlie Brown on TV, the tree lights are blinking, and they got a lot prettier about halfway down into it, actually. The Christmas carols were warmer, and God and I talked, and it was awesome. And I remember that distinctly, because that moment was when I pressed pause in my psyche and decided that that's how God meant for me to feel all my life. This is what peace felt like. This is what joy felt like. And why in the world would anybody want to keep that from me? I'd been lied to. This was wonderful. So this is going to be a part of my life. Somewhere along the line, in my adult years or in my teen years, whenever I get a chance to do this again, whenever that is, and I found numerous opportunities the older I got, this is going to be a part of my life. As time went on, I had grown up in taking music in a preparatory school of music at a university. I took 2 piano lessons a week and a music theory class from the time I was in the 4th grade until I graduated high school. Went to college with 2 piano scholarships, left college to go travel with a music group and go write songs, eventually to move to Nashville. But I have always been wound pretty tight. Alcohol helped me not feel quite so tight. It helped me feel better. I felt better about me. I felt better about what I did. I felt better about God. I didn't feel perfectionistic. I didn't feel like I didn't measure up. I felt great. So I found more opportunities to feel great. As time went on, Trish and I moved to Nashville. We moved down here in 1987. And we were out in our neighborhood walking one night. By then, it was early 90s. Our daughter was 5 years old. We're out walking in our neighborhood, and my wife starts having these very unique and unusual symptoms. She starts to have blurred vision when she gets hot, and she starts to suddenly drag one leg, and she suddenly starts to have tingling and numbness. And we go to the doctor, and we get a number of different diagnoses. We get, you're tired, you're fatigued, you're anemic, you're this, you're this, you're this. And for a few years, going back and forth with these relapsing, remitting symptoms. I didn't know what was going on, but something was strange. One day we went into the doctor, and we sat down, and he came in, and he had ordered an MRI scan because he felt like we might as well start getting aggressive with this because they're starting to happen more. She'd had some vision problems that weren't going away. And we sat down in his office, and he came in, and he flopped his folder on the table, and he said, "Tricia, what do you have?" I don't know. Because we had talked about MS earlier. He said, "What do you have?" And I was starting to really get pissed off because I'm like, really? You're going to make her say this? You're the doctor, you're Einstein, we're here, you tell us. And before I could even come into the picture with my retort, the doctor said, "What do you have, Tricia?" And she said, "I have MS." He said, "Yeah, you do. Now what are you going to do about it?" And he made her say it out loud so that it became real. I've found that as I've begun to rethink my faith, that's what confession is. We say it out loud so that it becomes real. We tell someone so that it becomes real. And when we say it out loud, we have to deal with it. He said, this is a relapsing, remitting thing. It's not going to be something that monopolizes your life, more than likely. 80% of the people with MS live really normal lives. It's a relapsing, remitting thing. We'll get you on some drugs. We'll do this, and you'll begin to be able to manage this. Well, over time, We didn't respond to the drugs. We didn't respond to the chemotherapy that we took for 5 years to arrest our immune system. We didn't respond well to the interferon that's $2,500 a month to take these shots that you learn to give yourself every day, that I had to learn to give her. And I'm a piano player, and she's starting to have a piano player for a nurse, and it's not working out really well. Tricia began to get sicker. I began to get sicker. Tricia began to lose mobility, went from a walker to a wheelchair, to not going out, to staying home. I took on the carpool duties because I work at a church and I can adjust my schedule. Things are a little bit flexible for me. So I'm the carpool dad, and then I'm the room mother dad, and then I'm, the guy that goes on the chaperone trips dad. And I'm also cooking, and I'm also going to the grocery store, and I'm also doing a lot of things for my wife and learning to do a lot of things that I had never thought I would do. And the only way I knew to deal with it, come on in, man. The only way I knew to deal with it was to drink. Because I didn't have a category in my faith for how I felt, for what God was allowing in my life, and for telling anybody what I was going through. I made my living in front of people, and I believed my persona. I believed that's who I was, and I believed that's who they needed me to be. So I didn't tell anybody. And then I got to a point where I couldn't quit. We would go to the doctor, and we would learn things like, you're going to have to start catheterizing your wife 4 times a day. Really? Did I tell you I play piano for a living? You're going to have to start doing that. And you're going to have to start changing adult diapers, and you're going to have to start taking on a lot of things that didn't look like people in their 30s and early 40s doing. So I drank some more, and so I drank some more, and so I drank some more. And then I began to feel like a victim. And a victim with a sense of entitlement is a dangerous person. So my victim began to tell me that I couldn't trust God, I couldn't trust people, I couldn't trust anybody. Just keep drinking, this will go away. And then I began to do things like wake up in my bed and have pizza boxes, and I didn't remember ordering pizza, eating pizza, paying for pizza, and God only knows how we're tagged in Domino's computer system of how they keep track of their customers. I was not remembering conversations. I was not remembering the things that I had done. I would go to men's groups, and men would say things like, I need you to pray for me because I'm starting to cuss in traffic. And I'd be like, oh, dude, I'm going to freak you out. I pee in the closet, okay? I don't know, maybe this is not the group for me, And I told people, and I hope I don't offend you, but this is just the honest truth. I told people my prayer life and my morning devotions literally were, I got out of bed, I went in and sat on the toilet because I had drank so much the night before, and I literally sat there with my head in my hands and said, Jesus, this shit's got to stop. And that was my prayer life. And then I went to a meeting at church, or then I went to lead worship, or then I went to whatever staff churchy thing I did. And my life didn't change until one day I was invited into a community of men by Nate Larkin because he was going to start something that we were going to kind of experiment with, and we would see if we got together if men would tell the truth. And it took a year for me to tell the truth because I was waiting for everybody to go first. And one day I went to coffee with Nate, and I said, I may have a drinking problem. Which is kind of like, Mussolini saying I may have a anger management issue. And Nate said, wow, tell me about it. Because Nate's whole thing is, if you're sitting here telling me you might have a problem, then you have a problem. And by the way, when your friends come to you and they say, I might have a problem with, they already do. Don't minimize it for them. Don't give them an out. Don't say, oh, no, you don't drink any more than I do. It's not the thing to do. Nate didn't do that. He said, wow, have you ever thought of going to an AA meeting? I literally said, why would I do that? I may drink like an alcoholic, but I'm not one. I mean, Why would I do that? I have rum in the weed spreader at home that I don't tell anybody about. I throw my booze bottles away after my remorseful binges the night before, and I throw them away in dumpsters, and then I can go back. I don't pour them out, because if you pour them out, it's gone. So I throw them in the dumpster so that I can go back after Jesus and I have this remorseful prayer conversation, and I do my self-loathing, which is also part of the ritual. And then I get in the dumpster and dig out my booze bottles and put them in the back of my car and go home and drink again that night. And so normal people don't do that. So Nate took me to an AA meeting, and he took me to another meeting, and he took me to another meeting. And I equate that with Nate and those men in that early time being the guys who cut the hole in the roof for me and lowered me down, because I couldn't do it myself. I couldn't trust anybody. I couldn't tell anybody. And then I began in my sobriety to go through this terrible depression because my wife was still getting sicker, and I had gotten sober, and God wasn't keeping his end of the bargain. I wanted God to show up on a white horse, rescue us, go straight down that wide open highway we hear about, and he wasn't doing it. He showed up in an 87 Bronco with bad suspension, and he's a terrible driver, and he says, "Get in." That's not the white horse one. I want the white horse that goes straight. I want to be rescued from, not rescued through. And if God had struck me sober like I wanted him to, I would have never learned anything. And we in the church pray for people to be struck sober all the time in some form or fashion. God, remove this thing that's going on. God, just miraculously make him wake up tomorrow and not want to do this anymore. That's not how God works. Not in my life and not in my world. He works in confession. He works in telling someone. He works in you working out your faith in fear and trembling. I began to wonder a whole lot of things, and I didn't trust the Presbyterians anymore where I worked, so I went up to this monastery up in southern Indiana and decided I'd hang out with the monks and see if they had anything to offer me. And they did. And I sat down with this monk one day, and I was bemoaning my loss of faith. I'm losing my faith. I'm losing my faith in God. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. I don't know if I ever believed that. And he said, "David, you're not losing your faith. You're losing your illusion of certainty. It's different." And I'm finding that even as 7 years now that it's been that I haven't had any alcohol, by God's grace, that I'm less certain about the things I always thought I knew. I'm not a great cheerleader for Jesus, but I totally believe in him. And the things that I wanted God to do miraculously, he allowed me to suffer through. And I still don't like it. It's a rock in my shoe. A friend of mine and I went to coffee one day, and he said, "What do you, out of all this stuff that you've experienced with your wife's health, with, she's had to have a colostomy and a urostomy. She's on a hospital bed at home now. She doesn't get up. She gets in her wheelchair maybe once every 3 weeks. We rarely go out, He said, "Out of all these things, what do you regret?" And I said, "I wish we had danced. I wish we had danced." It's a rock in my shoe. And we all have a rock in our shoe. I have a lot of regret about the things that my daughter didn't get to experience with me as a kid because I emotionally checked out. And it's a rock in my shoe. But we can take the rock in our shoe to Jesus. And we can take that rock in our shoe to one another. And sometimes Jesus is one another. But we have to tell somebody. We have to trust one person. I'm not asking you to take out billboard space. I'm not asking you to take out, an ad on the internet. I'm asking you to trust one person enough and pray that God would send you one person that you can tell. Because I know you have a rock. You live in a fallen world with the rest of us. You're human. You have a rock in your shoe. There's stuff you doubt, stuff that you don't want in your life, and stuff that is going on, and you're as pissed as I am at God half the time. But you can tell that to him, and you can tell that to somebody. And somebody that's not going to fix you. Somebody is going to say, I know, me too. Let's go to a meeting. Let's go somewhere together. Let's invite a third person into this. Who can we trust? Who can begin to get with us? And when the church begins to do that, that's when we're going to see reality. We pray for transformation, and when it doesn't happen the way we think it's going to, we transform ourselves into something that we think the church wants to see. We think that this transformed persona, which just means that we start lying to each other and not telling each other the truth. And we call that transformation. There's so much more that I'd love to share with you. That I know that we're running out of time, and we were committed to getting everybody out by 8 o'clock. But tell somebody. Share the rock in your shoe. Because you're only as sick as your secrets. We're only as sick as our secrets. Can I pray quickly? Great God, thank you for meeting us. Thank you for meeting us here today. Thank you for meeting me. Thank you for using me in spite of myself. I pray that you would give us courage, peace, wisdom, and acceptance today for these rocks that we carry. That you'd give us opportunities and people that we can trust. Just one person, that we can experience true confession, and that we can experience your power through walking with one another as two and three. I pray that you would bless these men, bless their families and their homes, and meet them as we carry these rocks together. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you.